So Donovan Cordova, he's our main character in Albatross Junction. He's the character that's going to be there throughout the entire story, really. He's a mainstay in our story. He's been there for 20, 30 years before our story starts, getting busy, doing a lot of stuff in the world, kind of becoming well known. He becomes well known in the world because he ends up feeding like large populations of people when everyone's starving. The way he does that is he actually gets alien DNA, combines alien DNA with food sources, and makes kind of a hybrid of Earth food and alien DNA, alien genetics. And he does that because we can't grow anything anymore on Earth when
nothing but shrubs and like little bullshit things that really won't sustain.
Everything is frozen up. So anything that can't survive like a negative 150 or 160 or 180, because the sun is gone.
The sun is gone.
In our world of Albatross Junction, that means that they can't really grow anything. So unless they grow something inside, like right in like some kind of greenhouse.
Yeah, like some people I'm sure have like some little greenhouse where they might have a couple of tomato plants or things like that.
Most of the world is like starving and they can't grow food. So Donovan Cordova comes up with like when he's like 20 years old, it's like the age of like when like Alexander the Great like took over the world. I see it as like he's like 20 years old. He comes up with this plan, and he has the talents of like a scientist. He's really, really intelligent, and he also has the talents of like a military leader. And those two things were combined in our story from the very, very start with Donovan Cordova. We always thought that he'd have at least those two strong points.
I see Donovan as being strong enough and having like always having the audacity to take a chance no matter like what he thought the outcome might be, you know what I mean? So like even in his 20s when they say, you can't travel 10 miles or 20 miles out in that ice and negative 150, he's like, fuck it, like I'm smart enough to know I got to insulate myself this way. I got to take this many, rations of that many calories and that much fat, to sustain my body to make it 20 miles. Like he's one of those guys. He's so calculated. He just goes for it. Doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks. He just knows what he wants to do and he makes it happen.
Later on, he has a set of twins, and those twins become a really integral part of Albatross Junction. They are going to be part alien. So Donovan's kids, we're also going to see his traits in his kids. We're going to see his traits in his like human kids and also his part alien kids that we're going to see later.
He's always on task. Like he's never just, he's never really having too much of an emotional moment. He's not, let's go hang out and hug and go fish. He's not about that. He's just about, listen, what are we going to get done today? He's got his end goal in mind when he wakes up, and his 3-year plan, his 5-year plan. He's just trying to make shit happen constantly. And I mean, I don't even think he feels any type of way about being seen as the leader of, Quantum Heights. He doesn't that doesn't turn him on. He's just like, listen, I don't care what you call me. I don't care. I don't even care what you guys are fucking doing right now. Just do what I ask you to do when I ask you to do it. And don't get in my way when I'm trying to make something happen. And just in case for those who don't know, Albatross Junction is actually the area where he has his labs, like his science labs, and where he's conducting all those experiments with alien technology and DNA and shit like that. So in the beginning of the book, he gets contacted from his little device on his hip saying that something happened, right? Like something came to life at Albatross Junction. So they take off and they go over there, and that's pretty much where the book sets off. The bastard, like he's a fucking bastard too, because his place needed a sun satellite. He knows of one that's pretty close by, but it's sustaining another city, but it's not his city, so it's not my city. I don't care about that shit. I need another sun satellite. I'm gonna go get one. I don't really care that you're not gonna have one after I take it, but I need it. That's it.
Like what you said about him being very calculated. He's for humanity. So I bet you if he did the calculation and saw that, like, let's say the nearby city with a sun satellite that maybe his city needed, but like, let's say he saw the trajectory of that city and he calculated that in the future, in 1 or 2 years or in 3 years, that city would be blossoming and be very successful. and produce like scholars and military leaders and just a great assets to the community, he probably would like let a sleeping dog lie. But considering he probably saw Pike Berg, because I know you're talking about Pike Berg, which is the area where he kind of was at war with them before the Sun satellite, basically before the story opens up. I bet you if he saw them at their trajectory as being upwards, he probably would have left them alone. Like, he's smart like that. But I bet you he saw their trajectory going down, so he's like, I'll just take that shit.
Take that shit. Take that shit.
Ultimately, he's probably for humanity, but he will do whatever he can for Quantum Heights because that's his responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. And let's not forget, he uses that to kind of thaw out the circadian, that big mega ship. You know what I mean? So like, he knows that he needs that more than anything to get things moving forward, to be as progressive as he can. So
he has this like bird's eye view of being a leader in the world for so long. By the time we come into the story of Volume 1, he is already like almost 50 years old. He's somewhere in his 40s, right? So if he had his first like major, almost worldwide success with, feeding the hungry with new technology back when he was about 20, he's had a lot of things happen in between when he's 20 and where we find him in the story here in issue number 1 of Albatross Junction. And somehow, even though he did like what we consider like a lot of good things, but a lot of people don't see it that way. Not everybody sees it that way. So he has a lot of these enemies. He has a lot of political enemies. He has a lot of people that don't like him. That don't like him.
Yeah, he's too cold and he's too calculated. Where people don't really understand what he's doing until it's done. Then hindsight is 2020. And they're like, oh, okay. But he's not the type. He's not going to stop what he's doing to explain to you because you don't understand. He's just going to keep it moving. But as a side note, when he is throwing out that big mega ship that we just spoke about, the Circadian, he kind of awakened some old soldiers that were on that ship, like frozen, like cryogenically frozen. Main one being Bomag, and Bomag kind of like becomes a quote unquote enemy of his off the bat because he makes his way to Pikeberg first and hears about how about this man who had a satellite on Quantum Heights and stole another one. He's like, what the fuck? Like, why? If things are so bad, why is he taking your satellite just so he can have two? Like, doesn't sound too good to him. And Bomag is not going for that shit. He's another tough ass old soldier from the old school ways, and that's gonna amp things up a little bit too. We'll talk about him and then probably in a future video. I remember specifically the day when I was by your place and we were talking about how does this man look to you, and we were kind of like joking around. We're like, yo, he's like stocky like Tyson, but he's probably like, he looks almost like Samoan, but not like a big crazy Samoan. He's gonna be like short and stout like Tyson, big neck, big broad shoulders. And then we were laughing about how that old I think it was like a general or some shit in from Matrix. Remember the old like I forgot his name, I forgot his character's name, but he was the one yelling out all the orders when they were at war with the machines, and they were that little kid was running with the bullets, and he was like that older like general that got in that suit and started shooting shit.
Yes,
he kind of like the first sketch of Donovan had kind of like a similar face to him. That's why he has like the little Samoan tattoo on his chin and shit like that. Like he's a Pacific Islander. Well, he's from those ways.
That's, we kind of just spoke that he was maybe, his complexion was maybe on the darker side, and that the way he looked was maybe, like you said, like a Tyson, and he had like an intellect like a Tesla or something like that, like an innovator. And we also spoke about his ferocity being when it really gets hot and heavy, he can get to be almost like a berserker mode Wolverine.
Yeah, he goes crazy. So I always wanted to make it a point for not so much of a character flaw, but just to say that he's all about progress, making progress. But I'm always telling Ant, like, I'm big on like dualities, like having like like a yin and yang. So I want him to look like he's always trying to make the best happen, but in his wake, he's leaving so much fucking destruction that really doesn't mean. But like we just said, like it's calculated destruction, but he's still fucking people over. So it looks like it sounds like he wants to do nothing but great things, but he will shit on your whole city if he needs to.
Donovan does these things which sometimes maybe hurt people. Sometimes people end up dead and stuff. But I think without Dobbs by his side, those things
Far worse.
wouldn't even be considered. Like,
Yeah,
so whereas like innocent bystanders and stuff like that might be considered when Dobbs is there, and Dobbs has been with him for a really long time. John Dobbs is his second in command. We spoke about him in the previous character profile video. If Dobbs is by his side, or if Dobbs is in the picture, we know that Donovan is going to basically act like as human as it's possible for Donovan. But when at a certain point in our story, Dobbs isn't there anymore, and then we start to see a change in Donovan, because with our main character, he's going to go through some changes as things start to basically, I don't want to say unravel, but things change in his day-to-day and in his world. There's a trajectory for this character that's going to take him different places than the personality we're describing today.
Yeah. So Donovan gained his following, his little like you know, I mean, you wouldn't really say they were nomads. He kind of like found his place, settled down, and people just kept hearing about him, right? Word of mouth, like, oh, this dude, he has a sustainable city, he has food, he has shelter, he got like a whole like security gate around it. And since he's so like adept with science, he knows how to like manipulate the nanos in people, like if the shade spot is his, right? Like if he doesn't want to be found, he can put a device on, you can't locate him. Like, you know, it's like you know, it's almost like taking the chip out of a cell phone. He knows how to just call it a shade spot. He'll turn this thing on, you don't know where he is. He's not giving off any feed. You can't read his nanos anywhere. So he does things like that, and then people just started following him. Like he just became a natural leader, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger until he got a sun satellite. And then we enter our story years after he got the first sun satellite. He got a second sun satellite, and his city is pretty much thriving. It's full, it's organized. He has his little army of people. It's protected, and he's going on to bigger and better, or he's trying to, or he thinks he is.
Yeah. Now with Quantum Heights, the hierarchy is like you said, the highest apartments are the richest people, the most contributors to the society, and the lower section is for the more lower version, like the people that have the menial jobs in the society. When you push out even farther than that, there's actually a wall around Quantum Heights, and then you have like nomadic people kind of huddling near the wall.
They stay near the you know, like the security proximity, you know what I mean? Because like it'll heat up their nanos. So like a security measure that Donovan has in place is there's a gate around Quantum Heights. And if you like, say, if I just ran through it, then my nanos would kind of implode, you know, eternally. I would just like melt from the inside. But the closer I get to it, the more they start to heat up. You know what I mean? So like, the closer I get, the more I start to heat up from the side. So it's, you know, it's keeping me warm at the same time. So I'll push it to see how close I can get without frying my brain. You know what I mean? So like, you'll see a lot of nomads just not freezing to death by staying close to the security gate.
So everybody that we come in contact with in Albatross Junction was born after the nanotech was placed in everybody. And this gets passed down from mother to child all throughout the history of our world, going back, 270 years or so is when the nanotech has been embedded in human beings and also in all the animals and stuff throughout the world, but it doesn't have the same rules. There's laws with the nanotech, like you cannot kill. So that's why if somebody kills somebody in our world, they themselves get that punishment, that like corporal punishment of dying themselves. So the nanotech reacts in certain ways and does certain functions, but Donovan has figured out certain ways to partially control the nanotech in that way of, for instance, putting up a fence around Quantum Heights that repels the people who are unwanted in Quantum Heights, the people that don't have clearance to come in Quantum Heights. He can at least control it that much. He can't control nanotech so much where he could turn it off. Totally.
No. He could just affect
certain tricks, right? So he has that. He also has the shade spot, which you mentioned. The shade spot is a device which can block, because with the thing is with the nanotech, if somebody knows your nanotech signature, they'd be able to tell where you are. But with the shade spot, he can block his nanotech signature. He could block people in the area. So him and John Dobbs have one of those shade spots active with them a lot of times when they don't want to be like tracked. So sometimes they're going to Albatross Junction.
They came up with that to go to Albatross. Yeah, they came up to go to Albatross so he can conduct all his like experiments. Because like he's growing like clones, bro. Like he's doing like clones, and he's splicing together species from like alien species with like human DNA, and he's doing a bunch of shit, man. He gets DNA from other planets when it comes back. He tries to see what the DNA is about. If he's successful at growing the species, he wants to see how they adapt to this world, and if they can adapt to this world, why he wants to find out, like why, how, what do they have that we don't, and he's just gonna just use it. And like we said, like he's smart enough to know that without a local star that can warm the whole planet entirely, like after some years, the atmosphere itself would freeze and fall to the ground, which is crazy. And once that happens, that's it. You're fucking done. There's no protection from outer space. Like you're done. Like you're legitly in outer space at this point. You know what I'm saying? No atmosphere. The atmosphere would freeze, bro, and it's gonna fall to Earth. That's crazy.
And that's been staved off so far by these artificial sun satellites. And we'll talk really deeply about the technology of Albatross Junction in another video. Talk a lot about the star, like the faux stars, but there's so many of them up in the atmosphere and above the atmosphere. There's technology up there that was trying to keep the atmosphere going as far as the way it used to be when we did have a sun. And then there's sun satellites that were focused toward cities and towns on the Earth itself to try to warm these places. And over the years, being that hundreds of years have gone by, a lot of these satellites have crashed into each other, have been disabled, have broken down, have just been turned into space garbage. So it really is getting to become a dire circumstance in the world, and that's he's the only one with the power to kind of try to do anything about it, even though we would think like it may seem a little hopeless to even do anything about it. He is not the type to give up, so that's why he's trying to do something. And the Circadian, when it was built like hundreds of years ago, before it left orbit, before it went to other planets and actually did come back, it housed hundreds of thousands of people on the ship. I mean, the only problem is that ship was built up in space. It really wasn't meant to be on the ground. And now, as we know, the Circadian is under like hundreds of meters of ice. So I don't know if he's going to be able to rise the ship, or if he's just after the stuff in the ship, which is a possibility too. Whatever he can kind of get, I think, to find a solution for as many people as possible if humanity can be saved. Like, I think he's kind of one of the only hopes that we see in the story so far.
So ultimately, Donovan Cordova, he's pretty ice cold, man. He's ice cold, right? I'm not gonna say he's emotionless, but he's not a warm and fuzzy guy. He's direct. He always has an outcome he's going for. His one of his ultimate goals is to thaw out that big ass ship we just talked about, the Circadian, and to get that fully functional. That's another reason. That's the reason. Basically, the reason why he took the sun satellite, like I said before. And he just knows, like, he just wants Quantum Heights to just keep thriving, right? Donovan, man. Donovan is a serious guy. He's a real serious guy.